There is a reason the energy around you suddenly feels unfamiliar today. And if you have been sensing that something deep inside your emotional world is beginning to loosen its grip, you are not imagining it. Most people will move through this day completely disconnected from what is unfolding above them. They will continue repeating the same exhausting routines, reacting from the same emotional wounds, chasing the same chaotic patterns without realizing the atmosphere around them has already changed. But for you, this shift is going to feel personal, almost physical. Like your nervous system has finally been given permission to unclench after carrying tension for far too long. What happens today is not a minor astrological event that fades into the background after a few hours. This is the beginning of an entirely different rhythm governing attraction, desire, emotional connection, and the way your heart responds to intimacy itself. For weeks, and for some of you even longer than that, life has felt like an endless state of pressure. Every moment demanded movement. Every situation carried urgency. You may have noticed yourself becoming more reactive, more impatient, more emotionally exhausted without fully understanding why. Even simple conversations may have felt charged with irritation. Even love may have started to feel draining instead of nourishing. There has been this constant sense that you cannot fully relax, because the second you let your guard down, something will collapse. And what makes this even more difficult is that many of you blamed yourselves for it. You wondered why your body felt heavy, why your spirit felt overstimulated, why your emotions seemed caught between frustration and fatigue. But what you have been experiencing was never random. The cosmic atmosphere itself has been operating like an open flame pressed against dry skin. Mars has been moving through Aries, the sign where its intensity becomes amplified to the highest degree. This is raw fire energy. Action without pause, desire without patience. Survival instinct turned all the way up. It creates an environment where everything feels immediate, where every obstacle feels personal, and where even small emotional tensions can explode into conflict before you realize what is happening. Living under this kind of influence feels like constantly bracing for impact. You wake up already tired. Your mind races ahead of your body. Your emotions become defensive before anyone has even threatened you. And over time, that pressure changes the way you experience connection itself. Romance stops feeling soft. Passion starts feeling transactional. Attraction becomes tangled with anxiety. Instead of feeling chosen, you feel tested. Instead of feeling emotionally safe, you feel like you have to compete for affection, prove your worth, or constantly protect yourself from disappointment. This is why so many people have felt emotionally starved, despite craving closeness more than ever. The energy surrounding relationships has been built on tension instead of trust. But today, the atmosphere shifts completely, and the difference between what was and what is beginning now will feel almost shocking once you recognize it. On May 18th, within only a few short hours of one another, Mars exits Aries and enters Taurus, while Venus leaves Gemini and moves into Cancer. Then, during the early hours of May 19th, at exactly 1:30 in the morning, these two planets form an exact sextile, a harmonious 60-degree alignment that astrologers have long associated with cooperation between emotional needs and physical desire. But what makes this moment so rare is not only the aspect itself, it is the degree at which it occurs. Both Venus and Mars stand at 0 degrees when the sextile becomes exact. 0 degrees is not ordinary energy. It represents initiation, a threshold, a clean opening untouched by the emotional residue of the past. This is why the shift feels so different from simply repairing an old cycle. The universe is not asking you to recycle the same lessons again. It is not trying to revive dynamics that already exhausted you. This alignment carries the sensation of emotional reset, as if the cosmos itself is wiping away the noise that has distorted your understanding of chemistry, attraction, and intimacy. For many of you, This will feel like finally realizing that chaos was never love. Emotional instability was never passion. Constant unpredictability was never proof of connection. And that realization alone may become one of the most important emotional awakenings you have experienced in a very long time. Because what is emerging now is not fueled by adrenaline. It is fueled by emotional safety. Mars entering Taurus slows the nervous system down. Instead of rushing, it stabilizes. Instead of fighting, it builds. Taurus energy does not chase chaos because it seeks consistency. At the same time, Venus entering Cancer softens emotional defenses and reconnects people to vulnerability, tenderness, and genuine emotional presence. Together, these energies create a completely different kind of chemistry than what most people are used to. This is not the unstable attraction that burns hot and disappears overnight. This is the kind of connection where actions begin matching feelings, where emotional intimacy strengthens physical attraction instead of competing against it, where someone's consistency becomes more seductive than empty intensity ever was. And this is where many people are going to experience a profound internal shift. Because deep down, a part of you may have become addicted to emotional volatility without even realizing it. You may have mistaken unpredictability for excitement because chaos kept your nervous system activated. But sustainable connection does not require suffering. Real chemistry does not demand emotional warfare to stay alive. The Venus-Mars sextile unfolding now represents mature passion, the kind capable of lasting because it is rooted in emotional alignment instead of emotional confusion. Unlike harsher aspects that force growth through conflict, the sextile opens a door. It offers possibility, but it also asks for conscious participation. You cannot remain emotionally armored and still expect to receive the softness this energy is trying to introduce into your life. You have to allow yourself to believe that love can exist without exhaustion. That attraction can feel grounding instead of destabilizing. That intimacy can feel peaceful without becoming boring. And for many of you, that may be the hardest lesson of all, because peace feels unfamiliar after surviving so much emotional noise. But this cosmic reset is teaching you something your soul desperately needed to remember. Safety is not the opposite of passion. Safety is what finally allows real passion to grow without destroying you. And as this energy continues unfolding over the next several days, you are going to begin noticing exactly who and what in your life can meet you at this new frequency, and who is only connected to the version of you that survived through chaos. What makes this alignment so rare is not simply the harmony between Venus and Mars, it is the way this energy dissolves the invisible conflict most people carry between desire and action. Usually the heart and the instinctive self are moving in opposite directions without people even realizing it. One part of you longs for closeness, while another part pushes too hard and scares intimacy away. Another part craves emotional depth, but shuts down the second vulnerability appears. Some people want passion so intensely that they become controlling, while others fear rejection so deeply they wait forever and never move at all. Most romantic frustration comes from this internal contradiction, the painful gap between what someone emotionally longs for and the way they unconsciously pursue it. But today, something extraordinary happens in the sky. For the first time in a long time, those energies begin cooperating instead of sabotaging each other. The emotional self and the active self stop pulling in opposite directions. And when that friction disappears, chemistry no longer feels forced. Conversations flow differently. Attraction feels calmer but deeper. Emotional connection no longer requires endless decoding because people begin expressing themselves in ways that finally match what they genuinely feel inside. It creates the sensation of emotional translation, as though two people who've spent years misunderstanding each other suddenly begin speaking the same language without effort. But to understand why this shift feels so emotionally significant, you need to understand exactly what each planet is contributing to this moment, because the deeper meaning of this transit is not simply romance. It is emotional re-education. Venus enters Cancer on May 18th at 9 in the evening, and almost immediately the emotional atmosphere softens. The difference is impossible to miss once you tune into it. Venus in Gemini operated through curiosity, conversation, flirtation, and intellectual stimulation. It preferred movement over permanence, options over attachment, and mental chemistry over emotional depth. It enjoyed excitement, but often avoided emotional weight. For many people, this created relationships that felt stimulating on the surface, but emotionally incomplete underneath. There may have been attraction, but not enough safety to truly let the heart open. There may have been communication, but not enough emotional grounding to build trust. Venus in Cancer changes all of that instantly. Cancer is ruled by the moon, the celestial body connected to emotional memory, instinctive attachment, protection, home, and the need to feel emotionally secure. When Venus moves into this sign, attraction itself becomes more emotionally sensitive. Suddenly, people stop caring so much about appearances, performance, status, or charm alone. What becomes magnetic now is emotional sincerity. Vulnerability becomes attractive. Gentleness becomes attractive. Emotional consistency becomes attractive. People begin craving someone who feels emotionally safe instead of emotionally exciting for only a fleeting moment. This energy longs for real closeness, the kind that exists behind closed doors where nothing needs to be performed for validation. It seeks the intimacy of quiet routines, meaningful silence, shared meals, late-night honesty, and the feeling of being emotionally understood without having to explain every wound. Venus in Cancer wants connection that feels protective instead of destabilizing. It wants to feel emotionally chosen. And for many people watching this unfold, this transit may trigger a painful but necessary realization about the relationships they have accepted in the past. Some of you may suddenly recognize how often you settled for attention while starving for genuine care. Others may realize how much of your emotional life has been spent trying to appear strong because vulnerability once felt unsafe. Venus in Cancer begins dissolving that armor by reminding you that sensitivity is not weakness. Emotional openness is not failure. The desire to feel protected emotionally is not something shameful. But this energy also carries a shadow side that cannot be ignored. Cancer energy can become overly attached when fear enters the picture. It can hold too tightly when it feels emotionally threatened. It may confuse self-sacrifice with love, giving endlessly while quietly building resentment underneath the surface. It can retreat emotionally at the first sign of discomfort, hiding behind silence instead of confronting pain directly. This is why the lesson of Venus in Cancer is balance. To nurture without controlling. To love deeply without emotionally imprisoning yourself or someone else. To create emotional safety without turning fear of loss into emotional dependency. And this is precisely where the entrance of Mars into Taurus becomes so powerful, because Mars brings the grounding this emotional water energy needs. Mars enters Taurus on May 18th at 6:30 in the evening, and this transition marks one of the most noticeable energetic slowdowns of the year. After weeks of Mars moving through Aries, where action became impulsive, urgent, competitive, and exhausting, Taurus changes the pace completely. Taurus is fixed earth energy. It does not rush. It does not panic. It moves deliberately, carefully, and with incredible endurance. Mars in Aries acted like fire spreading uncontrollably across dry ground. Mars in Taurus acts like roots growing beneath the soil. Slow, patient, steady, but impossible to uproot once established. This shift changes not only behavior, but the way desire itself is experienced through the body. Mars in Taurus reconnects people to physical presence. It pulls awareness out of constant mental overstimulation and back into sensation, touch, breath, comfort, food, scent, sound, and the quiet intelligence of the nervous system. This is why so many people have recently felt physically drained. The body itself has been trying to signal that it cannot remain in a constant state of emotional survival forever. Mars in Taurus demands restoration. It teaches that desire is not always loud. Sometimes the strongest attraction develops slowly over time, through consistency, trust, and repeated emotional presence. This is not the type of chemistry that explodes instantly and disappears overnight. This is the kind that deepens gradually, becoming stronger with every conversation, every moment of reliability, every small act of care that proves itself over time. Mars in Taurus does not beg for validation or chase recklessly for attention. It understands value. It waits patiently for what feels worthy of long-term investment. Like the symbol of the bull itself, this energy appears calm on the surface, but once committed, its loyalty and determination become nearly immovable. And when this steady physical devotion combines with Venus in Cancer's emotional tenderness, the result is one of the most emotionally nourishing dynamics astrology can create. Water and earth naturally support one another. Earth gives water structure and stability. Water softens earth and allows life to grow. In this alignment, emotional vulnerability is no longer fighting against physical desire. They begin strengthening one another. Mars in Taurus is also operating inside a Venus-ruled sign, meaning action itself must now answer to emotional values. The active principle becomes gentler. Pursuit becomes more intentional. Physical desire becomes protective instead of consuming. And what emerges from this combination is a completely different experience of connection than the chaos many people have mistaken for passion. This is the energy of someone who proves love through consistency instead of promises. Someone who creates safety not only emotionally, but physically and energetically. Someone whose presence calms your nervous system instead of triggering your fear. Someone whose touch does not feel invasive or demanding, but grounding, comforting, almost familiar at a soul level. And for many of you, that realization may become the most emotional part of this entire transit, because you are beginning to understand that the love you truly needed was never supposed to feel like survival in the first place. When Venus and Mars finally perfect their sextile on May 19th at 0 degrees and 13 minutes, something subtle but life-changing becomes fully activated in the emotional atmosphere surrounding relationships. This is not chaotic attraction disguised as destiny. This is not the unstable kind of chemistry that keeps people trapped in cycles of confusion and emotional exhaustion. This alignment carries a completely different message. It is the universe revealing what connection is supposed to feel like when emotional safety and desire stop working against each other. It is almost like a cosmic signal quietly whispering that love was never meant to feel like survival. Healthy chemistry does not demand emotional warfare. Real intimacy does not require constant anxiety to stay alive. And while everyone collectively feels this energetic shift in some form, there are 3 zodiac signs standing directly in front of this doorway. 3 signs about to experience this Venus-Mars alignment in ways that could permanently alter how they experience attraction, emotional connection, and even their own sense of identity. If you belong to one of these signs, or if someone important in your life does, what unfolds over the coming days may feel uncannily personal, as though the universe itself has decided to intervene directly in your emotional story. Cancer. This energy is centering itself around you in a way that is impossible to ignore. Venus enters your first house of identity, appearance, and personal presence on May 18th, and the effect is immediate. It is as though the emotional light around you changes overnight. People begin noticing you differently without fully understanding why. There is a softness, a warmth, an emotional magnetism radiating from you that pulls others closer almost instinctively. But this goes far beyond physical attraction. What people are responding to is the alignment happening inside you. For perhaps the first time in a long while, your emotional world and your outer presence are beginning to match. With Jupiter also traveling through your sign during this period, this becomes one of the rare moments where expansion, visibility, and emotional confidence all converge at once. The insecurities that normally force you into emotional hiding begin losing their grip. That inner voice, constantly questioning your worth, becomes quieter. You stop shrinking yourself emotionally in order to feel safe around others. And that alone changes the way people respond to your energy. At the exact same time, Mars moves into your 11th house of friendships, communities, social circles, and future connections. This detail matters more than you realize. The chemistry entering your life now is deeply connected to your social environment. It may emerge through a friendship that suddenly develops emotional tension beneath the surface. It may come through someone you casually know, but never truly saw before. It may arrive through a gathering, an online community, a mutual connection, or an interaction that initially appears ordinary before becoming emotionally significant very quickly. The 0-degree sextile creates a direct, energetic bridge between your first house and your 11th house, between the version of yourself becoming more visible and the people surrounding your world. The message here is unmistakable. You cannot remain hidden and still expect this energy to fully reach you. Cancer often retreats emotionally when uncertainty appears. Your instinct is to protect yourself first and reveal yourself later. But this alignment is asking you to reverse that pattern. The universe is trying to pull you out from behind emotional walls that once felt necessary for survival. Opportunities are forming around you right now, but they require participation. They require visibility. This is not the moment to isolate yourself emotionally or convince yourself that no one could truly understand you. The chemistry you have been craving is connected to your willingness to let yourself be seen exactly as you are becoming now, not as the wounded version of yourself you have carried for years. Taurus. Your transformation under this alignment is impossible to separate from the body itself. Mars has just entered your first house, your sign, your physical presence, and the impact feels like life force returning after a long emotional drought. Yes, astrologically, Mars is considered in detriment in Taurus, but for you, this transit awakens something essential that may have been dormant for far too long. Confidence returns through embodiment. You begin reconnecting with your physical presence in a deeper way. There is a steadiness in your movements, a grounded intensity in the way you carry yourself, a quiet certainty replacing hesitation. People notice this immediately, but what matters even more is that you notice it. You stop apologizing for your existence. You stop minimizing your desires. You stop shrinking your energy to make others comfortable. Mars in your first house creates a magnetic physical aura that is impossible to fake because it comes from genuine self-possession. Meanwhile, Venus enters Cancer in your third house of communication, conversation, local environment, and everyday interactions. This is where your chemistry begins unfolding, not through grand dramatic events, but through proximity, repetition, conversation, and emotional familiarity. The attraction emerging now is woven into daily life itself. A neighbor, someone you speak with regularly, a person connected to your routines. An exchange that starts casually and slowly deepens into something undeniable. The sextile between your first and third houses creates a rare fusion between physical magnetism and emotional communication. You are not only becoming more attractive physically, you are speaking differently. Your words carry emotional warmth now. Conversations feel effortless. Flirting becomes natural instead of forced. There is a playful intelligence enhancing your presence that makes people want to remain in your orbit longer than they expected. This is not superficial attraction. This is chemistry, built through repeated moments of connection that slowly deepen over time. The emotional lesson for you is about allowing closeness to exist within ordinary moments instead of waiting for some dramatic cosmic sign to validate what you already feel. The attraction you have been searching for may already be standing directly inside your immediate world. You simply have to slow down enough to recognize it. Scorpio, your experience under this alignment feels less like attraction arriving suddenly and more like emotional reward after an exhausting season of inner transformation. The full moon in your sign on May 1st forced you into confrontation with truths you could no longer avoid. You've been peeling back emotional layers, confronting old wounds, exposing patterns, and carrying emotional weight most people around you could never fully see. It has been psychologically intense. At times, you may have felt emotionally stripped bare, as though life itself was forcing you to examine every hidden corner of your emotional world, whether you wanted to or not. But now the atmosphere begins changing. Mars, your traditional ruler, finally exits your sixth house of stress, work, obligation, and emotional burnout, and enters your seventh house of committed partnership. This is the beginning of a major relational shift. Your focus moves away from survival and back toward connection. But unlike before, you are no longer approaching intimacy from the same emotional place. The version of you emerging now has greater emotional honesty, greater awareness of your own needs, and far less tolerance for shallow or emotionally manipulative dynamics. The chemistry approaching you now is not meant to distract you from yourself. It is meant to meet the deeper emotional truth you uncovered during this recent period of transformation. And that is why this next chapter feels so different from the relationships and emotional patterns you have outgrown. Scorpio, what begins now is not a small emotional adjustment. It is a complete redirection of your energy after an extended period of psychological exhaustion. For weeks, and for many of you even months, your focus has been trapped inside the sixth house terrain of responsibility, stress, work, obligations, routines, and the endless pressure of simply trying to keep life functioning. It may have felt as though every ounce of your emotional energy was being consumed by survival itself. Your days became repetitive. Your body carried more tension than you admitted. Even moments that were supposed to bring joy may have started feeling like another task to complete rather than something you could truly enjoy. Many of you have been emotionally isolated without realizing it, so consumed by managing problems, fixing situations, and holding yourself together, that intimacy itself began feeling distant or secondary. But now Mars, your traditional ruler, leaves that exhausting cycle behind and enters your seventh house of committed relationships and deep partnership. This is enormous. The energy that was once trapped inside stress and maintenance begins moving toward connection, intimacy, and emotional union. At the exact same time, Venus enters Cancer in your ninth house, the house connected to expansion, wisdom, travel, spiritual understanding, philosophy, and experiences that radically broaden your emotional perspective. The sextile formed between these houses creates something far more meaningful than simple attraction. This is chemistry connected to growth itself. The person entering your life now, or the relationship deepening around you now, is not arriving simply to make you feel desired. This energy arrives to expand you emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically. It carries the potential to completely alter the way you understand love, trust, and emotional partnership. Some Scorpios may encounter this through travel, education, spiritual spaces, or conversations that unexpectedly crack open a new worldview. Others may notice an existing relationship suddenly deepening because both people are finally reaching the same emotional frequency after months of emotional distance. Either way, this chemistry does not remain shallow for long. It forces emotional evolution. And after everything you have emotionally survived recently, This becomes one of the most important lessons of all. The universe is teaching you that surrender is not weakness. Real intimacy requires courage. Trust requires courage. Allowing someone close enough to truly affect your heart requires more strength than emotional isolation ever did. And now, after confronting so many inner shadows, you are finally being given an opportunity to experience connection that feels grounded in loyalty, emotional honesty, and shared direction, instead of emotional games or control. But what will this actually feel like in real life? What changes will you begin noticing as this Venus-Mars sextile unfolds over the coming days? First, pay attention to your body, because the body always recognizes energetic shifts before the mind fully understands them. If you have been feeling restless, overstimulated, emotionally tense, or unable to truly relax, you may suddenly notice moments where your nervous system begins softening. Breathing feels easier. Sleep becomes deeper. Emotional pressure starts releasing from places you did not even realize were carrying tension. Mars leaving Aries and entering Taurus slows everything down enough for your body to finally stop operating like it is constantly preparing for battle. Second, watch closely for who begins appearing around you now. This chemistry is not necessarily loud or cinematic in the beginning. In fact, the most powerful connections under this sextile often begin quietly. A conversation suddenly feels emotionally significant. Eye contact lingers longer than expected. Someone's presence feels calming in a way you cannot explain logically. You notice yourself feeling emotionally safe instead of emotionally activated. And that distinction matters more than you realize. Many people have spent so long associating chaos with attraction that peace initially feels unfamiliar. But the chemistry forming now is not built on adrenaline. It is built on emotional consistency. Third, trust the gradual unfolding of this energy. This is not instant obsession disguised as destiny. It is the slow burn. The kind of connection that deepens through repeated acts of reliability, emotional presence, and physical consistency. Attraction under this sextile becomes stronger the safer two people feel with each other emotionally. Every conversation matters. Every act of care matters. Every moment of follow-through matters. This is chemistry that matures instead of collapsing under pressure. And fourth, communicate openly, because the sky on May 19th is supporting emotional honesty in extraordinary ways. Mercury forms a trine to Pluto, allowing people to speak truths that normally remain buried beneath fear or emotional self-protection. Earlier in the day, Mercury also forms a sextile to Neptune, softening communication and making emotional understanding more intuitive, compassionate, and emotionally transparent. This creates a rare opening for conversations capable of changing relationships permanently. Speak honestly about what you feel. Share what has been difficult to express. Vulnerability flows more naturally now because the emotional atmosphere supports truth instead of punishing it. But there is another layer to this story that cannot be ignored, and you need to understand it clearly, because what begins now will not remain untested for long. This beautiful Venus-Mars sextile does not exist in isolation. Only 7 days later, on May 26th, Mars in Taurus forms an exact square to Pluto in Aquarius. And this is where everything intensifies. Mars square Pluto is one of the most psychologically charged aspects in astrology. It exposes control issues, hidden power struggles, ego conflicts, manipulation, emotional resistance, and the collision between force and transformation. It pushes everything beneath the surface directly into the open. So why does this matter now? Because the connections beginning under the current sextile are about to face pressure. The universe will test whether the chemistry forming now is truly grounded in emotional maturity, or whether it was only temporary comfort disguised as compatibility. The Mars-Pluto square will ask difficult questions. Can this bond survive intensity? Can it withstand conflict without becoming destructive? Does emotional safety remain intact once tension enters the relationship? Are both people emotionally mature enough to confront discomfort honestly instead of retreating into manipulation or fear? The relationships built on genuine emotional alignment under this sextile will not collapse under that pressure. They will strengthen. They will prove themselves resilient because they were built on truth rather than fantasy. But superficial dynamics, emotionally immature attachments, or relationships held together only by convenience will begin cracking apart very quickly. And as painful as that may feel for some people, it is ultimately protection. Better to see reality clearly now than spend years emotionally invested in something incapable of surviving truth. That is why your approach to this energy matters so much. Do not enter these new connections carelessly. Build slowly. Build honestly. Build something rooted in emotional integrity instead of temporary emotional gratification. Because what begins now carries the potential to become permanent if nurtured correctly. This is not a passive transit. The sextile opens a door, but you still have to walk through it consciously. Ground yourself physically. Mars in Taurus needs embodiment. Step away from constant mental noise. Walk outside. Cook. Rest. Reconnect with your senses. Venus in Cancer needs emotional safety. If you are already in a relationship, create room for honesty and emotional softness. If you are single, stop pretending you want less than you truly do simply to appear detached or unaffected. And for Cancer and Taurus especially, understand that the chemistry forming now is likely much closer than you think. Do not wait endlessly for some dramatic cosmic fantasy to arrive while overlooking the people already standing inside your daily world. Most importantly, remain present. This is a 0-degree aspect, a true beginning. It asks you to release emotional attachment to the past and stop projecting fantasies onto the future. The connection you have been waiting for can only emerge fully when you allow yourself to meet this moment without carrying yesterday's wounds into it. And if you are willing to do that, what unfolds next may completely redefine your understanding of what healthy chemistry was always supposed to feel like.